Hello, my name is Tracy Betcher. I'm the owner of GenJ. I would like to welcome you all here and thank you for coming. I know it's a work day and it's hard to do those things. A brief overview as to how GenJ got to this point. GenJ is an environmental consulting company. We've been working in San Juan County for over 35 years. We began in marine consulting when Fish and Wildlife decided that we needed to have biological surveys for anything in, on, or under the water. That was in 1986. When Army Corps of Engineers put into place biological evaluations, GenJ biologists were in the first training session for that. Since then, GenJ has been at the forefront of all environmental changes at all levels of regulatory services, county, state, and federal. Originally, we were working with a permit coordinator from San Juan Island for marine projects. Unfortunately, she passed away, and we finished off some of her permits. Regulatory agencies found out that we could do permitting, and suddenly we were in the permitting business for marine projects. Fast forward, we had a client that had a project that spanned both marine and upland, and they asked for one-stop shopping. Could GenJ handle the upland permitting? That's how we got into upland permitting. Word got out that we were working on upland permitting, and the phone hasn't stopped ringing. Most of the people calling us were having difficulty with the permitting process with San Juan County. And after listening to many tales of woe, we realized there was a commonality in all of the issues. We were contacted by professionals from San Juan Island and encouraged to get the Orcas Island professionals together so we could provide a united front of going to county with these issues. Many people who have come to us have expressed concerns about retaliation from county personnel. We share your concerns. At last count, which was last week, we had 28 businesses on Orcas Island, 36 businesses on San Juan Island, and 6 businesses on Lopez Island that have contacted us regarding permitting difficulties. If you're doing the math, that's 70 businesses that are being impacted. And most of these businesses have multiple clients. Again, thank you for coming out and stepping up. At GenJ, we work as a team. All projects have a project lead, and we all work on various projects. Jason Hensel was tasked with heading up this project and putting together this meeting and collating the emails and the declarations that have been provided to us by various professionals. If you have not put something in writing, we encourage you to do so. We do have some forms here that have a list of the primary issues that we have heard about. We ask that you put your name on the paper, circle the one that pertains to you, and if it's not there, write a brief description of what your issues have been so that we can collate this and present it to county. I want to state emphatically, this is not a bitch session. It is intended to clarify issues people are having with the permitting process and to find resolutions. Please read over the list. If you have an issue not listed, please write it down and we will collate this and present it to county. At this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to Jason Hensel, who will go through the issues we have identified to date.
Thank you. Hey everybody, thanks for making it. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and many of you know me in my former life as the building official. I'm here today not as a disgruntled employee. I want to make that very clear. When I left the county's employ, I joined up with GenJ and they've asked me to help with their permitting division. And nearly every customer that we've run into, much of them in this room and others, have expressed some kind of problem, and we started to notice that there was a huge issue with the county and the permitting department because these problems were the same over and over and over again. So what I did was just collate this list and ask that we present this to the council or to Mike Thomas, to at least that somebody is listening, so that we can kind of get the word out there, because I don't think they're getting the message. And so that's why we're here today. I've created just a rough breakdown of the issues. I only printed out 5 of them. We can pass this around if no one has one. But I'll just go through briefly. And the intent here is to not devolve into, well, I have this problem, I have that problem, but to just discuss the rough, broad parameters of each item. And then you can either join us in that discussion later at a different time, or you can write to me and send me some information that you've experienced with the county that presents your problem. But the goal here is to look for solutions. Really, that's it. I'm not here to complain. I'm here to find a solution. We all live here, we work here. We're trying to see a functional department that helps us continue our professions and enjoy living here. And right now, that's just not happening. So just to start, I'll just go through this list right now. It's about 14 items. Some seem a little more important than others. Some are actually so important that, we need to raise this to the level of attention to the council, and that's why we're here today. The big one we'll start off with, and this is no particular order, recent practices or forced practice permitting problems and the lack of enforcement. Anybody who's cut a tree on this island knows that you got to be looking over your shoulder. Code enforcement's coming after you. When the council updated the critical area ordinance years ago, there was a lot of contention then. That has just evolved into misinformation, and apparently, from what I've been told by the county staff, is they didn't handle the DNR forced practice permitting correctly, and so now they're trying to make up for it. And so what that means is the current staff at the council or at the county may have misinformation, and some of that information is getting spread around the county in a manner that's not all the same. And so we're running into a lot of frustrations with people hearing different stories, conflicting information from when we speak to the DNR folks, and then what's written in the county code. And so if you've had that problem, feel free to send us some more information to at least express your concerns and any issues you've had. I've reached out to DNR. They're willing to actually come out and do some training, not only for county staff, but for local community people, builders, excavators, tree cutters, realtors who might be interested. And the whole goal is to make sure that we're all speaking with the common language, and we know the requirements for the permitting, and we know the expectations of the county, and then obviously try and follow the rules here. So that's the first issue. The second issue is recent issues requiring mitigation for plants removed for normal construction on approved permits. And this is outside critical areas. This is outside the shoreline. Obviously, those are dealt with within the code. But this is a change that has happened recently that was never here before. And this is something that's a reimagining of the current restrictions in the county critical area ordinance. And what we're hearing from the new staff at the county is that every single tree outside of the critical areas, outside of the shoreline, now needs to get mitigated, which means if you cut it down to build a house, you put a septic system in, if you put a driveway in, if you plan to put a lawn in, you have to somehow now mitigate, which means hiring a specialist to provide a mitigation plan with a specific list of approved plants. That's never been asked of anybody before, and so the restrictions that are coming down from the county right now seem onerous, and it's new, and the codes haven't changed, so we're wondering why that's happening. But the real issue, kind of sub to that, is that the staff at the county won't at least decide on an approved list of mitigation plans that are acceptable. So Army Corps, DNR, DFW, all of these agencies have a list of Western Washington approved mitigation species. Sometimes the list is over 200 plants that they see fit to approve for mitigation purposes for their works. We're hoping San Juan County can do the same thing, and they've refused. And in fact, they've pointedly refused. And it's very frustrating for an arborist to create a mitigation plan when you ask the county, hey, I've got a list of 50 plants that my owner wants to use. Well, we don't really know if that list is going to fly or not. And we'll get to you maybe if we decide to let you do it. And so we're very frustrated. We're hearing this on the biological assessments when we do as Gen J, our biologists do the no net loss reports, and they're being confused as to what they're being told by the county. And arborists that we work with that are certified are being told many different things and can't find it in the code. And so we're just frustrated. Third thing, along the same lines, ignoring the research and conclusions of scientific professionals. And this is actually quite wide-ranging and very, very scary because it undermines the authority of someone who's actually taken the time to get the degree, to get the license, and so on. So professional surveyors, professional engineers, wetlands biologists, geologic hazard specialists. These people have been told by the county that their reports are just not very good. And we've had people that have said they submit work to 26 other Washington counties, and San Juan County is the only one that says their work is no good. And so that is frustrating from a professional level to hear that level of, your stuff's garbage, do it again. Or, we don't believe you, do it again. And so that level of frustration we would like to pass on to you because it's falling on deaf ears at the DCD department. So, item number 4. This is one that's going to affect the economy, and this, I can't state this enough. When the economic slowdown of 2008, 2009 happened, people were looking for work, trying to find jobs, and the department at the time was doing its best to make sure that it facilitated any permit reviews so people who had work that needed work could work. And we have a looming recession that could be on the horizon, we don't know, but this is such an economic factor in the county, and construction is a huge part of the tax base for the county and for the people who live here. For someone to say, well, now I have to lay you off because the permit turnaround time is 12 months or who knows how long, it's affecting everybody, and it's affecting a large part of the community. So the topic is essentially the permit turnaround times are approaching 6 to 12 months. More importantly, the emails and phone calls go unanswered. When I started doing permit work for people, I had customers that had legitimate building code questions that I felt should be best answered by the people who are in charge now. And when I've asked those questions, they go unanswered. I have 6 emails into Raphael since November, and not a single one has been responded to. And if he doesn't like me for whatever reason, that's fine. I can deal with that, but it's affecting you guys. And this is why we're here today. The next thing is really a pet peeve of mine. This is really important to think about what's happening. Elimination of the owner-builder permitting option without legal due process. This has been a huge issue in the county. The owner-builder permit ordinance has been around for 45 plus years. It's gone all the way to the Supreme Court. It's been challenged and it succeeded. So it's a legitimate ordinance on the books. I have been told, many of my customers have been told, they have no longer an option to submit an owner-builder permit application. And I have emails to prove it. The point is that David has now changed his tune and said it's always been available when it hasn't. And so I feel the duplicity is important to expose. I'm not pointing fingers onto someone who isn't doing something. This is just amazing. This boggles my mind. So I just need to bring this to light. When I ask the people in charge to talk about it, they just turn a blind eye. They don't care. So I know it affects a small portion of the population here because not everybody wants to do an owner-builder permit. But for those that do, it's a legitimate option. It's been on the books. There's no reason for the director to, by fiat, choose to not accept those permits, regardless of whether you like the permit or not. So, next one. Reversing previous county council decisions on allowing owner-builder structures to be used as vacation rentals. This one also really surprises me because it goes against precedent. 20 years ago, there was a case where a couple on San Juan Island wanted to build an owner-builder, or they had an owner-builder permit, got a final, wanted to do a vacation rental permit, they applied for one. They were denied at the county level, they appealed and were denied at the hearing examiner level. They took their appeal again to the council, and the council at the time said, oh yeah, we expect that the vacation rental part of what we do here, what we offer here, should be a normal use, and owner-builder use should be affiliated with that. And they overrode the hearing examiner decision at the time. They allowed the owner-builder to be a vacation rental project. So here we are 40, years later, and the owner-builder's still here. And yet we've had customers that have tried to do owner-builder vacation rental permits, and David has told them they can't. They need to get engineering, and they need to bring the building up to current codes. The house was never built to those codes. And so he's going against the precedents that the council set at the time, and he's ignoring the fact that the building never was intended to meet current codes. That really bothers me coming from the building perspective. It's just ignoring the rules, essentially choosing to do what he wants. Next item, refusing to accept permit applications. This is for docks, for joint use docks. This is not specific to everybody, obviously. Everybody doesn't have a dock. But for those customers of ours that tried to do this, again, it actually goes against the precedent that the county had set years ago when applicants who own more than one parcel could apply for a joint use dock. The problem that we've faced with this particular customer, and the reason I'd like to bring it up to the forefront, is that we had agreed to do a joint use covenant that the county had modified the language on. The customer was fine with those changes. But we were told 6 months ago that those changes were forwarded to the PA's office, and they weren't. And so the lawyer for the customer did a public records request, and he's still searching and hasn't been able to find out the correct information. But we were told over and over again, here we are 6 months later, oh, we'll now get to review your permit because we just approved the joint use agreement. And so here we are wondering what's going on. It's been stalled. The prosecuting attorney's office was never aware of it 6 months ago, and so we're just confused as to actually what's happening. So it may not affect everybody. It's important to look into. We feel we're being deceived. Number 9, elimination of DCD policies without replacements. Well, the new director can make whatever decisions he likes. He can create new policies and interpretations of the codes. He's obviously empowered to do that. No skin off my nose. But what he did do is he eliminated all the current policies that dealt with the questions that people were trying to do on a day-to-day basis, and he hasn't replaced them. And so all those issues that those policies tried to address, those questions are still there. If you try to get a permit and something happens and the previous policy dealt with it so that you knew which path to take, now staff doesn't know where to go, there's no direction, there's no new policies. It's like if you've eliminated them, replace them with something. We're hoping, and that was last summer that they were replaced. Still waiting. This has caused a lot of confusion for people. Number 10, this is kind of long-winded and it's more in the code. It relates to people who want to do commercial building applications. Previously, the state allows, it's in state law, that allows anybody under certain circumstances to apply for a commercial permit. You want to do a cafe, you want to do a restaurant, you want to do a movie theater. Most of those things under certain restrictions can be applied from anybody without having an architect stamp or an engineer stamp. Now that's not saying you don't need to meet the code requirements. What it is saying is that anybody can apply. So a homeowner who wants to rent a little spot downtown and turns it into a juice bar, as long as they follow the code, they should be able to apply. Well, that's been eliminated. And that is stricter than state law, which the county can do. There's been no policy, there's no application changes, there's no notification. Nobody knows what's going on. And so for the homeowner, for the average Joe that says, hey, I want to do a little cafe in downtown East Sound this summer, and I go and I fill out the application that's on the county website, you're automatically told after 6 months that it's been sitting there that you need to go get an architect. And so for many people, that's a huge business decision. And for a lady who just gave me some information about one of the local restaurants she was trying to do, that's not happening this summer for some of those very reasons, among others. And so it's affecting the community. It's affecting the ability for people to provide for themselves. And it's just unreasonable. All right, we got a couple more and then I'll get to some comments. This last one is continuity for permit options on SmartGov permit portal. The county, 2018, I think it was, we created SmartGov, which was our permit tracking software. It came with a lot of work we had to finish. And we tweaked it in a way that worked for our islands. We're kind of geographically isolated. Each island kind of group had to have its own group of permits for tracking purposes. But what we really did is we focused on providing the same level of service to each island, the same permit options to each island. Somehow, for some reason, that isn't a good idea, and it's all been obliterated. And what I mean by that is you're on Lopez, you want to apply for a commercial plumbing permit, you can, but if you're on San Juan Island, you can't, because it's not the option that's available on the website. If you want to apply for an owner-builder permit, those have been removed, again, contrary to what the director has said. But in addition, so all these different islands have different permit options that are available on the portal, which means it just leads to confusion. And people are wondering, well, what do? I want to build something on Lopez, and now all of a sudden the permit option's not available. No one's helping them. There's no direction, there's no instructions, nothing. Makes it confusing. Last one is really a big question mark. It's the whole agent authorization that now requires to be notarized. This is a pet peeve for people who process a lot of permits because it seems like an extra step. The county has, in my experience, had an agent authorization form that's been available for decades. The previous building officials years ago had written a policy on it. That's one of the only policies still on the website from 2007, where the policy basically explained, look, we want the owner of a parcel to be able to hire an agent to work on their behalf and submit a permit on their behalf. That is perfectly legal. We understand that process. Now, for some reason, that is inadequate and it's been changed, and now you have to get it notarized. Okay? Well, that is a challenge for people who don't live here. They do offer remote notary services. We do that here in Gen J. But what it's really telling people is that we want you to jump through another hoop. Here's another hoop that you have to jump through to get your permit that should be just this simple. A mechanical permit. You want to do a solar permit. All of a sudden you've got 100 solar permits because you're a solar company on the island. Can you imagine the level of hassle that is? They hire an extra person that doesn't make any money to just process the paperwork for the county now that there's all these extra requirements. Permit hasn't changed. Here we are. So, just to kind of recap, these are the issues that we're seeing. There may not be all of them. It's not maybe completely inclusive, and there's people that talk to me all the time about their issue. It might be slightly unique. We can add that to our conversation. But again, this is really why we're here. It's for you guys. This isn't about me. This is about the community and a non-functional building department. The issues that we're trying to raise, we want to at least address to Cindy. So thank you for coming today. I don't expect you to have some all-seeing response today, but I just want you to be aware of what we're talking about. We've tried to communicate this to David. We've tried to communicate this to Mike Thomas. We've been pushed out of the meetings that were happening in the last month on San Juan Island for whatever reason, timing, space, whatever. And they said that they would have a meeting here in 6 weeks, and that was 8 weeks ago. And so I called this meeting because I'm tired of waiting. I do this for a living. I try to help the people that I like helping. I enjoy doing this work because it's interesting and I love helping people. Thank you for listening. I think I'd like to pass it off to Mike and have him kind of do a recap or a summary of the meeting they just had yesterday with David.
Well done, Jason. I'm here as the president of the San Juan Building Association, and to represent the folks that are members, and of course my own company because I'm involved. Not so much in permitting lately, but everybody we work for goes through it, so it affects us. I want to start by talking about the meeting that we've been having some meetings first with Mike Thomas. We brought him in separate of anybody else, and he met with us, and there are some leaders in our community in this business. Brent Snow from Roach Harbor. We had the director at the port of Friday Harbor because he's been having problems. Stephanie O'Day, Francine Shaw, Adam Sewell from Green Man Landscaping. We're all kind of having the same issues. So we talked to Mike about it, and then we scheduled a meeting with the next meeting to meet with David and Mike. And we talked about things, and then at that point, when we were having that meeting, Jason wanted to come over to get a chance to be in on that meeting from the Gen J group, and it was decided the county didn't want any more people there. Let's just keep the small meeting, but they would certainly schedule a meeting on Orcas and Lopez to meet with you folks. And so, like Jason said, that didn't happen. We had another meeting yesterday, and I'm going to read the email I wrote to Mike and David. It said, David and Mike, thanks for meeting with all of us yesterday. I took some notes about what we heard yesterday to memorialize our discussions. I also summarized my impressions. It says, okay, what we heard from David Williams, progress since we've been meeting. And That was, the question I asked him. David discussed some systems he is implementing, notably some front-end permit application completeness checks at the permit center. This is a very welcome improvement since we believe this should always be done and will save a lot of time for all parties. We hope that front end will be at the counter so that applicants know immediately if they've missed important submittals that are required to be in the application. And the next thing I asked about critical review. Staff will have up to 14 days to respond to applicants if their critical area submittals are complete. And if those submittals are not complete, the application would be sent back to the applicant, who would then have to complete an application but start the process over. We were informed that the county will be contracting critical area reviews out to a third party, and so I asked who that might be, and David told me they were planning to hire a guy named Jeff Neineman. The building department will also be subcontracting reviews for mechanical and HVAC for all commercial applications. Reviews for mechanical HVAC will continue to be done by the building staff. Staff is now being trained for the implementation of the 2021 Energy Code, which is going into effect soon. We were told that one of the triggers for critical area reviews for land use applications are if any part of the project is within 300 feet horizontally of land disturbance. They get the critical area information from Polaris on the county website. The Polaris website shows wetland streams, hazardous slopes, and critical areas. Anyone can view those by turning on the layers on the aerial photos on Polaris. There are at least 2 critical area elements which the public cannot see, and those are the protected wildlife habitats and archaeology. We asked a few questions about the county permit portal because it's broken. We were told that there are some glitches, and staff will try to fix them when they have time. There was some discussion about tree removal. My opinion is current county staff is lacking knowledge about what tree removal should be allowed before a permit is required. David told us the DNR would apply a 6-year moratorium on properties where land clearing that involve cutting more than 5,000 feet has been done without permits. I challenged David to show me the state law that indicates DNR would apply a 6-year moratorium in such cases. David said he would do that, so I'll let everybody know what he says, because I can't find it, and I was in the business of logging for a long time. I've done hundreds of forest practice permits, and I really have a good grasp on the law. The county, the way the current law says, if somebody complains and they go out and they see that a person is cleared without a permit and they've removed the stumps, graded the property, the DNR is what the law says is the DNR shall notify the local agency and the DOE. And they give the applicant a notice of conversion and that they're in violation, and then they notify the county and the DOE. And then the county kicks in. They could apply a 6-year moratorium, but that is not a compulsory thing. It's not required, as far as I know. Now, David says that I'm wrong, but we'll see. So anyway, where was I? CDPD is supposed to get some training about the Forest Practice Act and its permit protocols. There was some brief back and forth about specific permits, which are being held by CD&P. This is amongst our group, and I'm writing it to this to Mike and David. And there was no real enlightenment about those specific pending permits from David. In summary, this is my opinion now, I was pleased to hear about the improvements David said he is in the process of implementing. He told us some of his changes are already making a big difference by getting to approval faster. We are hopeful he is making progress. And then I said, honestly, I came away from the meeting somewhat disappointed in David's ability to understand the magnitude of the applicant's displeasure with the performance at the CD&P. The displeasure is widespread and from a numerous cross-section of people in the islands who have had to deal with CD&P. I know of longtime islanders, newcomers, public agency heads, and architects. Some of those instances I have read from things they've written to me, read about, that were written by the applicant were individuals who are in the business of getting permits within other counties, states, and cities. More than a few of those folks said the current CDP permitting process is the worst they've ever dealt with, and locals are saying the department is the worst they've ever seen it. It is very clear to me that trust and respect is lacking. The perception within our community is that CD&PD does not care about the time, expense, and difficulties they cause for the citizens who are seeking to do something which requires permits. This is not a good situation for our community, the department, our culture, or local economy. And then I told these guys, I said, I strongly suggest that you set up a meeting with the Orcas and Lopez folks to avert hostilities. This is in no way meant to be a threat, but I understand that in-person communication can be very effective in situations like we're in. As you know, Jason Hensel has put a meeting together today on Orcas in hopes San Juan County would have some representation at that meeting. So anyway, thanks for coming, Sydney. I'm going to finish by just, I don't know if I read a couple of excerpts from what's been going on. This one fellow wrote, professionally, I deal with several hundred building officials in Washington, Oregon, and California. Good building departments understand their job is 33% enforcement, 33% communication, and 33% being consistent. Great building departments also know their second job is to build relationships with the building community, which really makes the rest of their job 90% easier. You don't really have to enforce if you build relationships and educate and communicate. I thought that was good. Then he finishes, within 15 years of dealing with hundreds of building departments and crazy requests by inspectors, I have never encountered a building department so bad at communication or being consistent and who is so clueless on building relationships. I am complying with their requests, which I don't even object to, but if you document requirement as A and enforce B, and then enforce maximum penalties for doing A, it's not enforcement. It's entrapment and utter incompetence. This building department is at the bottom 1% on the West Coast. And they will have significantly better results with half the cost if they start doing their job, which they're not. This is I'm not going to read all of them because I don't want to read that long. But I have one that really should have been, and this is from somebody that lives on Orcas. I'll read this one. This isn't from Orcas. After purchasing my property in 2021, we submitted all the necessary paperwork and received approval to replace a failing septic system on my property. As part of the work, trees were removed to provide access to the existing tank. This was all covered on the permit application and included mentions that it would include some work on my adjacent vacant lot to gain access. As part of this work, 2 hazard trees, as identified by a certified arborist, were removed with the on-site equipment in anticipation of the approval of hazard tree removal permit that was submitted concurrently. The second permit application to remove hazard trees, as identified by a certified arborist, was in process as the work to complete the septic replacement was done. All parties involved on my side, contractor, arborist, and septic installer, insisted that historically removal of these hazard trees wouldn't be an issue as they were in danger to life and property. I'm not going to Brooke decided to visit the site after the septic work and had been completed to assess the situation with the hazard tree removal permit. It was at this time that she said we clear-cut a road into our property illegally, despite this being clear in our septic permit, and that we were practicing illegal forestry. When I discussed the situation with her, she told me that the approved tree removal was unclear in the permit application, and they erroneously approved and shouldn't have. She also denied the removal of hazard trees as no tree removal is allowed on vacant lots despite a clearly identified risk to the adjacent structure on my lot. We tried to work with the county through the original permit submitter, which was Andy Sachs, but Brooke was non-responsive and also no-showed at our meetings despite confirming. I've been trying to get a resolution, but the county has been unclear in exactly what they require in this limited situation. We think they are requesting a full habitat restoration plan, including ongoing monitoring, but I want to hear from them exactly what trees they are upset about. It is again unclear. There are more nuances to this story that I could explain when we discuss, but for all intents and purposes, we did exactly what we permitted and what was approved by qualified professionals of the county. What tipped me over the edge is one of the hazard trees that was denied approval for removing just fell last week and it missed the structure by feet. I have lost my patience and want to get this resolved as soon as possible and put a little pressure on them as they seem to be operating with impunity right now from the stories I'm hearing. I have lots of these. What I did is as I get them sent to me, to the building association, I put them in excerpts, and I'm sure that you folks have similar situations, but I don't want to take up all the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike, for giving us a recap on that. I did pass out some papers. If you could fill those out, please, if you have issues. Circle which one yours is or add two. If anyone has something they want to say, please come forward and Justin?
I just want to ask a question because I think you guys may have a better grasp on it, and Mike raised it in his discussion. He mentioned I guess she's an environmental steward. Is that the gal that you mentioned? Brooke. Yeah. So he mentioned Brooke, and
She's a planner.
she's a planner. Okay. I'm curious if you all have any experience with how the newly created environmental stewardship division of the county, which is its own functioning entity outside of the DCD. How are those two departments interacting, and who's doing enforcement? Because I'm hearing that we're getting enforcement out of the environmental stewardship world.
No.
We're getting enforcement comments out of the environmental stewardship world. And I guess I'm just curious, where does authority lie within the county as far as code enforcement and making these decisions?
I can answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So environmental stewardship has no enforcement authority. There is an inspector that had been created in that department, and that inspector goes out, collects information, and puts it on the desk of a code enforcement officer in DCD.
So just, I want to make sure I'm clear on this.
Mhm.
Environmental stewardship is visiting sites for whatever reason,
When there's complaints.
when there's complaints. But hold on, I just want to make sure I want to follow the chain of thought and the
Right.
paper process. Environmental stewardship, which is not an enforcement agency, is doing site visits and monitoring visits, is creating reports.
No, not site visits and monitoring visits. What my understanding, and I should say that I've got about a 60,000-foot view on this,
Okay.
but what was created, I can tell you budgetarily, and what the thought was behind it was so the code enforcement officers, because of the way that code enforcement works legally, they work under the aegis of the DCD.
Mm-hmm.
Now, environmental stewardship, there was an inspector position, investigator, let's call it investigator position, created under the aegis of environmental stewardship so that there was a pair of eyes on complaints about critical areas, ordinance violations, and shoreline management ordinance violations or claimed violations that had education in those areas and was not under the aegis of DCD, so you have checks and balances on what is being looked at. So when that information then comes to an inspector, that code enforcement officer is the one who evaluates that information and decides whether there needs to be anything brought forward.
So does that position report directly to David?
The code enforcement officer?
No, the environmental stewardship investigator.
No, that's Kendra's.
And so I guess the crux of my question, maybe the point I'm trying to make is we have a department which has no enforcement authority, which is actively investigating, to use the word that was used. We have an investigator who is reporting to a code enforcement officer outside of their department.
Not
And
reporting
so-
to, transferring information.
they're
They
moving-
report to Kendra.
They're taking a report, and their report
Okay.
doesn't go back to their supervisor. Their report goes
Correct.
to a code enforcement officer. And so, in my world, by proxy, that makes the investigator a code enforcement officer. And so, and that's fine. If the environmental stewardship department wants to be doing environmental code enforcement, that's great. But I'd love to see that brought forward to the public to have input on that, because I don't believe that when we voted for that position to be created in the county, that that's what we were voting for. So, but if that's how it's working, and that's why I'm asking these guys, what have you seen in the field? Because it feels like what we have is another branch of code enforcement that none of us really know anything about.
So
Understand your comment.
let me just add my experience so far. When we've had this discussion with our biologists at Gen J, who have been doing no net loss reports for customers, and there's some discussion about mitigation or planting or the assessment of no net loss, that discussion goes to Brooke at DCD. And what we're hearing is that Kendra's not her boss, right? David is.
Correct.
Okay. But when we're asking these environmental stewardship discussion questions about what types of plants can we use, what is an accepted list of plants to use for mitigation, she would deflect that, and either it would go to David. But when we asked Kendra about it, because she was environmental stewardship, she said she'd look into it, and we never heard back from her. So I don't know where.
That's what you,
So we've been frustrated at all ends because no one seems to take responsibility for what this staff member is doing, and it seems to be out of line with general expectations in the scientific community on what she's been asking for.
okay, so your issue is with the planners.
Yeah, I assumed that was
with-
a.
with-
I assumed she
there's a
was
planner
hired.
for she's David's report?
Yeah, I was assuming she was working for Kendra, so that's not the case.
No. Okay. So we're still back at, we need a consistent list of.
I would love to see it. Our biologists would love to see it. Other agencies provide it. I provided it to Brooke. She just refused to comment on it.
Right?
A question for you, Mike. I read your email this afternoon, sent to the Building Association. A little confused on several things that kind of found out. But one thing is this critical area review is being farmed out.
Well,
I don't understand.
yes. What's been happening is two staff members have been, I would say, for lack of a better word, overly zealous and opinionated to the extent that they are refuting a report from a qualified professional. In one instance, they wanted to come back and dig because they didn't believe them. They coerced the applicant into said, hey, we'll give you a permit if you just accept this as a class 2 wetland. And the applicant told him to pound sand. My wetland biologist, by the way, is certified. You aren't. She says it's a class 3. And they ultimately got their permit. But this has been going on, and it's gotten controversial enough that David does not trust the qualified professional. I will say that flat out because we've confronted with him several times. And he says, well, you see, we get a lot of ones that are wrong. They're erroneous and they need to be checked. And so this person that had Brooke come out and want to dig on the property because she said you didn't dig these test pits for the wetland in the right place, and was telling this to the wetland scientist. This person has been doing this, and that is where David just says, well, we're going to get that out of the county, and we're going to have a third party look at it. So I think that's a lot of money for the town or the county to spend when for years you had a list of qualified professionals who were accepted, who are licensed, and they have their stamp on it or whatever they do. I mean, in the case, can you imagine a certified arborist who says this is a danger tree, and a county planner says, I don't think it is, and it blows over on the house and kills an occupant? Does the county want that liability? Wetlands they can be evaluated in many different ways. It's complicated. And I do believe the county should stay out of that, and they should accept certified people, have their list. If they have some that are wing nuts that aren't doing it right, well, then maybe they can take them off the list. But when this person honestly went to the county and got a list of people, because she was told she had to have a wetland report, she went and did it, and then the county didn't like it. And tried to threaten them. I mean, they told them, well, at first it wasn't a full report. And then they said, well, it was basically a wetland delineation, which found the wetland edge and turned out the structure, everything was way out of that buffer. And so then when they refused to accept it as a class 2, the planner, a different planner, I think her name is Jessa, said, well, we can make you get a full report. And they did. So she did. So the person spent $4,000 to get a full wetland report. And it didn't change the buffer a bit. The buffer was the same. So that's the context you were asking for, was why they're doing that. I think that they don't want the county staff to be in controversy. However, they don't trust all of you folks who might be professional biologists or whatever.
I thought that was
Whoever.
their job, though, Mike.
What's that?
I thought that was their job, to review critical areas. The planners.
The planners are reviewing a report, but they should look at the report, look at it, make sure it's accurately placed on the property
Right.
in relation to what you're asking to do, and then call it a day.
Yeah. Why are we paying taxpayers for?
A third party.
Oh, yeah.
Because
That's
they
my
simply
problem. I
don't
get what
trust
you're
them.
saying.
I'd like to add one thing to this conversation, because we're seeing this more and more, where not only do they reject the report, they're actually calling the author of the report directly and wanting them to modify the report. So it's additional work that the owner hasn't authorized, but the county staff has asked them to modify the report. So that's extra work. Who's going to pay for that?
Well, 2 of those people put PhD behind their name.
Yeah, right.
And they are.
They know
really
more than
above
everybody in the
that.
room,
I don't
apparently.
care if you're a PhD or whatever. You've got to be a community member too.
No, if the report's deficient, I get that. But
Yeah.
if you submit a report, you should accept it at face value. And then if you have problems, you contact the agent or the owner. You don't go to the author of the report and ask them to do additional work on the county's behalf without paying for it. That's unreasonable. We've had people ask us, what the heck's going on?
So, I heard that Brooke is getting her wetland certification.
Great.
Which means that she is going to be continuous in going out on a job and saying this is insufficient with her certification as well.
Well, now she'll just essentially say her opinion is better than everybody else's.
So
and
we
no one-
have dueling experts.
Yeah, dueling experts.
And that, who pays for that? We all do.
We might as well just pay her for the wetland report.
Yeah. So I think that's a conflict of interest. It as much as, I mean, as a business person, I would call that a conflict of interest. And frankly, the same with the arborist. She's also an arborist. And I've never even met her. I just talked to a lot of people and the same name keeps coming up. Two names. We were told in our second meeting with David and Mike that David was going to move Brooke out of planning and, or out of permitting and put her into rewriting the comprehensive plan. And I flat told him, and I can put that in my letter, I said, I'm not comfortable with that. I said, I don't think that's right. If she is, in fact, has an ideological biases and I served on the planning commission for 8 years, so I understand how the process goes, and the council gets a chance at it, the planning commission gets a chance at it, stuff comes from staff. So
I just want to say that, over 20 years working with the building department, the positive side, I think we've got a good building inspector right now. He's working well with me. I hope everybody else thinks he's coming, qualified and doing a hard job there. I think that the department is understaffed, right? Now David's telling us that they're going to have to take one of the plans reviewers, transfer them over to the critical areas ordinance update. But that means that we're losing somebody who's going to help us get our work done through. And so, even though I'm really sympathetic to what the department's going through, I feel there's a real change right now that it's no longer a team approach, right? We're on opposite sides. When the first environmental stewardship stuff was coming through and we had to do stormwater, we had workshops with the county. We all took days off to go over there. We were like, okay, here's some new stuff, let's get it down. They were respectful of the professionals, the non-college educated excavators who have spent their whole life and know exactly what the water's going to do on all the rock there. So there's been a change from, we're no longer a team. They're not respecting us as being able to do a professional job. So now there's no more carrot or cookies they used to give us, right? It's stick, right? So now they're going to come out assuming that we're going to try and cheat them, right? I had $180,000 contract canceled last year because we were trying to get a re-roof permit. Didn't really need it, and it took them 5 months to go through till it finally got canceled. So I'm probably not the only contractor here that is questioned legitimately by the owners and the taxpayers in the county saying, I don't want to get a permit. It's too hard. Will you do this work for me? So we're like, okay, am I going to have my work for my crew and do an unpermitted project? Not that it's unpermittable. We'll always do permittable work. But the labor and industries, we all get electrical permits for our, projects that the clients won't go through the steps. So they're losing the builders as part of the team right now, as the person that Mike said was very eloquent about how that's easier for their job. They're losing the goodwill of the people here of wanting to even engage with them. When it makes it so hard to try and do the right thing, then where are we going? Another building project in town here, we've had the permit in since October, that's all going along fine. Just last month they said, oh, now you need a civil engineer to do, 50 feet of curb, gutter, and sidewalk. We tried to hire Mike to finish it when he was here, and the county said, no, that's too hard. So here is a position where, like, okay, we understand, it's always been in the code, you have to be able to provide curb, gutter, and sidewalk if you do the upgrade to your property. But they said, we're not willing to work with you as a team member, give you the demo permit, start in on the construction of the project until this is complete. So now we're, here after October, November, December, January, February, March, April, we're going to take at least a month and a half to run out and find a civil engineer to do some of this work, which it shouldn't need to be completed prior to us getting our building permit. So it's that kind of, we're going to stonewall you and use all the leverage we can. There's no teamwork. There's no ability like, okay, we understand you've got a construction schedule to meet. And that's the biggest thing. If I had 3 things that I would like to see from the building department, one would be somebody to come over here and have office hours and meet us and have over-the-counter permits for the super simple stuff. We've gone back and forth for this for years. You know, you should be able to write them a check and, you know, single trade permit, whatever. The second is a real time frame of when we're going to get a permit back. It's so vague right now. I mean, I'm looking on the county charts to see what you know, date permits. So they're issuing ones of 22, maybe in the low 500s right now. If you look on what permits are actually getting spit out for building permits, and I guess I really. David has never come over and presented himself to the building community on Orcas or Lopez. That's just the loss of, like, we are a service to you and we're a team. And I think that if we could start to heal that, a lot of these problems would be easier. So, all right, sorry to go on.
Anybody else? Justin?
Can I just pigtail onto the expert conversation? Because I have a permit that's been pending for the conditional use permit that was submitted almost a year ago. And the permit will bring 48 licensed child care physicians to our facility. We submitted the conditional use permit almost a year ago. And I'm almost hesitating to bring this up because I fear blowback because we're still waiting. Conditional use permit was supposed to be, hearing was supposed to be scheduled, I believe it was in August. It got pushed back to September, to October, to November. This is not because of the applicant, this is because of the county. We finally had the conditional use permit hearing in January. 2 weeks before we went to the hearing, this gentleman right here had designed a beautiful septic system that was completely what I would call an off-grid septic system, composting toilets and a pit toilet on the property. The property isn't serviced by municipal water. It will not have water service. It's a completely outdoor, off-grid educational facility. By the way, we have a $900,000 state grant that we have to spend in a limited time period. He submitted a septic permit to County Health. County Health approved the permit. So County Health, the top tier of any health decisions in San Juan County, approved it and loved it. They were actually enthusiastic about septic. We submitted our conditional use permit to the planning department and they rejected the approved septic permit that their own people approved. And when we went to our conditional use hearing, as the client, we had to sit in front of a hearings examiner with opposite the county, with two county departments arguing with each other, and as the client, wondering what to say. Because the hearings examiner wanted to know what the answer was. And as the client, all we could say is we have an approved septic permit. The county couldn't agree with themselves whether we did or not. And so, in the interest of trying to get this conditional use permit done, because again, we have $900,000 hanging out over here that we need to spend, we agreed to ditch the pit toilet because the county's called it a commercial cesspool for 12 kids to use an outhouse. We ditched the outhouse, and we are going to spend $28,000 on an additional composting toilet in order to circumvent any question at the hearings examiner level. That hearing was in January. I still can't cut a tree on that property because I don't have an answer from the hearings examiner. So my clock's ticking, but as we talked about the county not acknowledging experts, wetlands experts, biologists, arborists, the county doesn't even recognize their own department as an expert. And that, as an applicant, that's painful. Because where do you go?
It's very frustrating. I would like to expand on one of the issues that Jason read about. It has to do with county accepting an application. We had a client who, this is back to docks, it's where we started, was marine, and it's still a big part of our business. Submitted a joint use dock application. County said, nah, we don't like your joint use. It's not a joint use application. It's no good. Application they would not accept. We said, yes, it is a joint use. please accept and deny if that's what you're gonna do. They sat on it for months. Deny it if you're gonna deny it. Then we can go to the hearings examiner. But to just stonewall it is not an appropriate thing for a county to be doing. So that was one clarification on one of Jason's issues. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have.
Go ahead.
So I have the somewhat daunting task of writing this up for the sound. And I've got a lot of questions, but I'm not going to bore you all with that. And I look forward to speaking with the people involved, Michael and Jason in particular, in detail. But I've got two questions that I want to throw out so that the whole group, can maybe respond or hear this. The first is that no question, San Juan County is under unprecedented development pressures. In part, the spinoff from the housing, boom in the Seattle area regionally, and in part because we have a beautiful place that people want to live in. And in the last several years, as I understand it, the county, going back to 2019, the county has experienced the following year-over-year increases in single-family home permits, not total permits, just single-family home permits. 2019 to 2020, it was up 22%. Then the next cycle up another 27%, and then up another 77% year-over-year, each of those years compounding. And during that time, David got one new employee to cover this stuff. So
I think that's an issue.
how much of these issues of delays and inconsistencies in stalling, and what appear from your standpoint, do you feel are related to this escalation in workload and demands?
I think personally, I'm just speaking for myself at this point. Personally, I understand workload and getting more and more and more, and timelines stretch out. I don't think that addresses inconsistencies. I don't think it addresses going against policy. I don't think it addresses those issues.
I can speak to that a little bit, having worked at the county. And Gulliver hinted on it when we were talking. It's the Latimer report. It was a commission report that was done in 2005, and a third-party review agency came in and they examined the entire county's process. Why is it taking so long to get a permit? They went through the entire process. Here's what you do, step A all the way through Z. And when they got done, their conclusions were two things. You got to pay more people because the people you have get a little bit of education and then they go somewhere else to get paid more. Because the county, for years, has never paid enough people, the people here, enough to afford to live here and afford a home. So that's the first thing. The second thing they obviously understood was, holy cow, you have so much work, you need more bodies. And you know what? The county at the time said, great, this is a cool report. That's awesome. Because they didn't want to spend the money to get more staff to do the work. There was a ton of work then. There's been a ton of work since I was there. And there's obviously more work happening now with the latest, boom in construction. The trick is there's never been a will from the county's perspective to say, I need to put another body or two in this department because permit turnaround times are excessive. And when I became the building official, this is just back kind of anecdotically, I got a letter that was handed to me by the previous 3 building officials. And that letter was the exact same letter copied and pasted to the new building official. It had the exact same problems. You take too long for your permits. I hope you do a better job than the last guy. And it was essentially the same letter from the same group of concerned citizens that said the same problems exist and it was systemic. But we had no extra resources to do it. So that nothing ever changed.
Okay, which raises the question that's been flying around the room: who pays for that? So
Taxpayers pay for
yeah,
it.
so that becomes a line of conversation that we can pursue. So
It's an
that's good.
allocation of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, what kind of county do we want?
Yeah.
The other question I have, though, deals with, along with this mushrooming of development pressures and growth and everything, is the county is under an increasing threat of citizen versus citizen type of complaints and lawsuits and whatnot, some of which could hinge on, somebody claims that you relied upon an inadequate water report or something. I'm hearing about these reports that they go back and they want better reports, and this is causing delays and frustrations from your standpoint. But what the county is trying to do is shore up their case in case there is a challenge to what they've authorized. And to what extent are you taking that into account?
I don't really have a comment for that one. I can't speak to that.
I can answer that. It's pretty simple. If you put in a water system, there's a standard for it. There's build to standard, get it inspected and approved, and if it met standard for water quality, quantity, to get the building permits, that should be the end of the story. Same with septic systems. You have a design, the design is approved, put it in. Same with building a road. I build lots of streets and roads. Engineer's stamp is on it, the county and everybody else can stand behind that because it's been approved by a qualified professional and it meets the current codes, all the engineering specs. So there isn't really an option for the county to approve that other than say, okay, well, what they're doing is they're either downright refuting or continuing to question qualified professionals. And they should be able to recognize that person who has a license to practice that art. And so I don't really think the county has a liability in that realm, given the products were built according to specs, permits, and inspections. Inspections is also important. If the county went out and they didn't inspect and somebody's stairs fell down and they found out it was signed off, maybe they'd have a liability. But I don't think that it's an us versus them thing. I think it should be the rule of the rule book.
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, and just, I haven't really paid a lot of attention the last couple of years to what's going on, but Jason, was about one of your comments that, and I always hate saying when I was in office, but there was an intention for us to get things down to 8 to 12 weeks. So I disagree with you, is that I put forward and tried really hard to get additional staffing, and again,
No, this is before your time.
okay. Well, I mean, in the period of time, we were trying to get to 8 weeks for permits, and it wasn't, we were behind, it was still bad. This isn't a problem for 30 years ago, and it'll probably be a problem 30 years from now, regardless of the scenario. I think, from what I'm seeing, and I've, as a business owner, has struggled with the county on putting solar panels on my roof, and then all of a sudden, at the 11th hour, I now have to get an engineered permit, and I don't know who to go to. It took me 3 weeks or 4 weeks to find an engineer to stamp something. So if the county's going to now require this, then there should be a list of approved people that we can go to so we know what to do. A lot of us, and even I had a lot of experience in permitting, I've struggled with that. So I think, there's a lot of different issues. I have issues on the forest practice stuff, the way the county's looking at it. I've spoken to DNR and I worked on it when I was in office, and I think the county's going down the wrong path because unless Carlson's having a really good night, there shouldn't be a class 4 requirement anywhere in San Juan County except for maybe in Walden. I'm kidding, but I mean, a class 4 permit's a pretty extensive permit. The forest practice stuff was designed so DNR could collect money on timber sales outside of shoreline and critical protection. So I think there's a lot, and again, I walked in late, so I apologize, but there's a lot of subjects here. But I think the county tries, it's not easy.
No, I get that. I don't mean to imply that. I think there's always been this magical dance between, hey, we got enough money in the budget cycle, but we've put the application out and no one's qualified as applied. Oh crap, now what do we do? And then, and then you finally hire somebody and then the next person leaves from retirement or from other issues. So it's always been a challenge, but it's just never really been dealt with head on in a way that solved the problem, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's not like any one particular time period. It's just been an extensive systemic for years. That report was 2005. Obviously there was a boom in the early 2000s. There was another one in 2017, 2018. But the problem is still there. And I saw that letter from my predecessors, and it still had the same people's signature on it every 5 years when there was a new building official. So it didn't seem like it was ever solved.
I think we had a question back here.
I had a question to the statement that has been brought up. This is affecting the board. I'm not here as a representative
the building review is supposed to be self-funded, if I'm correct, right? So the building department is supposed to be self-funding through their permit fees. Land use is a budget item because it does long-range planning. Now, in the past, they were unwilling to go out and subcontract building permit reviews when they were behind because of the union contract. Is this a new opportunity for us if they're going to go out and subcontract critical areas that they could temporarily subcontract for building review if they can't hire somebody?
I think
mean, it seems like it's just a supply-demand problem, right?
it's a unique challenge, and I'll say this, I'll let you guys add whatever you want. Building plan review is actually easy to farm out because the standards of those codes are widely recognized. Critical area review for our county is unique enough that it's a challenge. No one else knows it well enough and in depth enough that you can just say, hey, I need to hire your company to do this work. You have to teach them the code to be able to review it. So that's always been a challenge from my time at the county. I don't know if that's changed, but from what you're saying is there's always been the land use component that's been behind the building side of review. Building plan review, even during my time, we got it down to 8 weeks. You know, that was something that we achieved, but they were still delayed on the land use side because it is so complicated. It's not something you can just farm out and have a third-party company turn this around in 3 days for me. I need this, this is weeks and months, and then you've got to train it. It's unique. It's a challenge.
Other comments?
I was reflecting on it. Back in the 70s, I went before the city council in Pullman, Washington, and argued that everything they did affects housing, and the price of housing goes up $50, $100, $200. Yeah, this stuff just boggles my mind. We're talking 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000, and the cheapest house I built and sold, I spent half that much on a building permit for 800-foot addition. Anyway, it's just, and the other thing I want to put out is I put homelessness on all this rigmarole we have to go through. It's the bottom of the line, they don't stand a chance.
No. You're exactly right.
Justin?
I'm sorry if I'm dominating the conversation. Sometimes I can't shut up. You just brought up a thing that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's homelessness and housing for people who are trying to make it on this island. It's actually the only thing that I brought to this meeting was a policy that was issued September 1st, 2022, and it has an implementation date, I believe, of July 1st, and it's all about RVs and tiny homes. And basically, it's a crackdown policy on the county side that's going to create all kinds of new permit requirements if you want to have an RV parked on your property and you need to house somebody on that. And it creates new classifications which are nowhere in the code. It creates policy that has never been reviewed by council. This hasn't hit council's desk. But there's policy, there's omissions in this, which can only be seen as intentional. If you have 2 RVs on your property, guess what? You're an RV park. That's not what the law says. The law says if the primary use of your property is to have RVs on your property, then you're an RV park. But what this says, if I have 2 RVs on my property, I'm an RV park, and therefore I'm illegal, and therefore code enforcement is going to crack down on me. Now, I'm not saying RVs are the solution to this, but we have a huge, huge population on this island living in RVs. And we can create policy that has enforcement action and, again, as Gulliver said, the stick. Or we can find creative ways to make policy which help these situations to be safe and effective in our community. So I happen to know I have employees living in RVs. I have people, and I'll say it right here, and code enforcement can come and get me. I have people living on my property illegally in violation of this policy.
Yeah.
But you know what? Without them, this community loses child care workers, it loses bank employees, it loses food bank volunteers,
Plumbers, electricians, construction workers.
Construction workers. So this is the kind of thing that scares me to death, because this I bet if I asked everybody in this room, have you seen this policy yet?
Didn't that go into effect
There
already?
there might be two of you who have seen it.
I read it, but didn't that go into effect already?
Well, it says that they will require, there's a July 1st date in this.
It's not clear.
Oh.
It's really not.
I read that and about fell out of my chair.
And so I guess the issue with this is, one, we have policy that's coming forward. Council hasn't had a chance to review it. It hasn't had a public hearing. We haven't had a chance to talk about how dangerous this could be. Secondly, we have policy in here which misquotes the law.
Yeah.
And the way it's presented, it's 5 pages. It looks really damn official.
Right.
Like, if I was a homeowner, this would scare me. And I'd read it as though it was truthful.
Well,
but it's not.
Where'd you find this?
It's on
County
the
website.
county policy website. So this is one of my points, right? So David eliminated all the policies, and he's only replaced 2: fences, which somehow I didn't think were as critical, but they are, and the tiny home RV policy, which again he misquotes law. It's like, holy cow! If you've only done 2 policies, and the first one you did tanked, oh my goodness, we're in trouble.
And I fear that I know our code enforcement officer very well. And honestly, I don't have an issue with him. He and I work well together. But I got 2 RVs on my property because I also happen to raise chickens. And guess what? The 2 RVs are chicken coops.
Yeah.
And, you're welcome to come try and spend a night in it. But I fear that I will have to evict my chickens because of a bad policy. Amongst other people I have.
But you hit on a really good point, because this has been a problem in the county for a long time. Is housing for people who may not have the millions of dollars to buy shoreline property or build a fancy home. And the density question, the comprehensive plan density question, has always been holding us back. And if there's some magic fix-it bullet for everything, that'd be great. I'm sure people have looked for it for years. I haven't seen it. But, when the director talks about how he is happy and excited about Appendix Q in the building code, that's tiny homes. Well, you can build a small home, but you still need 5 acres on it. And that doesn't change the density question. It doesn't provide housing for the people that need it.
What about the cluster ordinance?
That might be great. Love to see it. People have been talking about it for years. I'd love to see it.
And you still have to build it. And an employee making $20 an hour is making, I'm going to be generous and say they're full-time, they're making $40,000 a year. They're not going to buy land. They're not going to build a house.
Yeah.
But as a single person making $40,000 a year, trying to eke out an existence, if I can park an RV on a safe spot that has adequate sewage and has reasonable access to water, that might be what helps me get to the $60,000, to the $80,000, to the $100,000 job, to where maybe someday I'll be able to afford to build a house.
Yeah.
But this policy sends that person back to Scotty County.
Yeah.
Paul?
So, we have jobs that we're waiting to go to work, ready for permit. I've talked to a lot of building contractors that are in the same boat. I've talked to one building contractor that was laid off. He has lots of jobs and lots of building. In fact, he's backed up for 5 jobs. Doesn't have a permit. He can't start. He can't start, we can't start. So it affects our business. It's affecting his business. It's affecting his people that he's employed. He's got lots of work, but he doesn't have the permit in hand, and they've been in the county with, he said the last one was for 7 months, still doesn't have the permit. So I guess my question to the county would be, isn't there a way to review the simple, easy, they don't have eagle nets, they're not on the waterfront, they're not next to a critical area, they're engineered house plans, to review the simple ones and get them out the door. Even if there's one person that says, I'm gonna take all the simple ones, I can get 5 of these out today because I don't need to spend 7 months reviewing it or 8 months reviewing it. And if there was a way to do something like that, they could get the simple ones out the door, put these people to work, have the time they need for the complex ones, the waterfront ones, the critical area ones. But if the engineers he's taking responsibility. That's why engineers cost so much, because they over-engineer everything.
Well, they're putting their license on the line.
Yes, correct. And so, the county is
planning is not the hiring the engineer. But I guess my point is, maybe I'm just being silly, but I guess that's what I would like to if there was a way to do that, that would lessen their burden to get the piles of permits out the door and get rid of the simple. Put
Yeah, that's
people to work.
actually, there's I'm with the building association and I meet with other executive officers and we kind of talk about the same problems, and a lot of the local associations are having a lot of these problems too with permitting delays, and that has been something that's come up, that there should be two different buckets, something for, simple decks, remodels, and then the more complicated land use ones shouldn't be holding up some of the more simple ones.
And we have heard from people who have laid off people because lack of permits. And, that affects the entire economy, not just the person that got laid off. But they can't pay their rent, they can't pay their electric bill, they can't buy their groceries. It's a chain reaction.
And they leave the island.
Yeah.
If I lay off
Yep.
any of my guys, I'm gonna lose it.
Right?
I'll go to work for Paul and then I'll. Because we're all hurting for help.
Hey, we'll
We are. We are all hurting for help, that's
Tracy,
true.
I have a question for you, and then I have an idea for Cindy to run with.
Okay.
And I have to say, nobody reached out for me for this meeting. I actually just came on my own dime. So, I have to pick up my kid.
Oh.
So I'm gonna leave at 5, but
I
happy
can
to
make
hear
it quick.
until-
Make it quick.
Yeah.
Mike.
Question for Tracy,
Okay?
which I want Cindy to hear her answer. We know from the Latimer report, I've read that report, I've known about it for years, and I just looked at it again. I gave it to David, I gave it to Mike Thomas. Given that we need employees, or they need some more staff in there, and maybe pay them more too. What specific positions would you fill in the department?
At county?
Yeah, because you guys submit a lot of permits. Where would you, if you said you need this person, what would that be?
It appears as though it would be under planners, but I don't know. It could be under land use.
Okay.
I don't know where the bottleneck is. We just end up getting stymied on multiple permits.
Yeah.
So that would be an internal, I would assume Mike Thomas would be the one to put that question forth to.
Yeah, I would. But I know that goes to Mike because he's the administrator. But the seed gets planted in a political manner.
True.
Mike's got to have the emphasis because they approve the funding. And all
Right.
that. So, and then the question for Cindy, or the ideal plant in your head. What if a landowner, especially on a home, they get through land use and they said, okay, you can put this house here. In a building permit, since it's codes and rules and it's all the International Building Code and all of those, what if we hired as a landowner? I said, I want my permit to be reviewed. And it's been reviewed, it takes it out of the counties. They don't have to worry about the union because they are circumventing the county in the review process. They look at this, it meets engineering, it meets the safety, all of the requirements there. It's something that could be reviewed in another place that is non-specific to this island. And I was wondering if the county, just planting the seed, if you guys could entertain that idea of changing the rule to allow a person to hire their own third-party building reviewer. Because they're out there that do that, and other people have done that.
Interesting concept.
It's been talked about in the past.
Yeah.
The trouble is that you end up with the union discussion.
No, but if I hire them,
Right,
union,
but
I'm not.
that
I'm
you're
not-
taking
I don't
away
have a
work from the
contract.
county's employees. It's really
Huh?
you're taking away work from the county's employees.
I realize that, but at that point, all it is information.
Right. There were times. I'll just add this from my experience. There were times when we had a big push, and we would hire out a third-party plan reviewer. In fact, Raphael, who is our current building official, he was hired in that respect. He would come in for a couple months in the summer when we were the busiest. We would contract him for the limit for $10,000 or whatever it was in the summer. He could work for that period of time, and it was a contract, and he was done. And it helped with plan review turnaround times, but that's not where the bottleneck is. It really isn't. It's at the land use.
It's
side.
in land use.
Yeah.
It seems like if there was one person to be hired, it would be the one that does the permit review. Because David had said that's where they're having issues in the department with people submitting incomplete permits.
Yes.
So if we could get one person who is highly qualified, not somebody who's just being brought in, but somebody who really would be able to look down, because I mean, I'm shared earlier how we're just, months in, they're finding an extra thing that was missed in the first permit review. So I think that would be a key position to be able to let everybody know exactly what permits and studies they need to fill out, and allow the department to focus on a complete permit when it comes in.
Right.
I'd like to tag on to that in one of the frustrations that I have heard over and over for years is that you get your permit in and they say, oh, we are missing this. And you provide that study. Oh, well, now you're missing this one. Oh, now you're missing this one. So it drags on for months instead of saying, oh, you have 3 things that we need. Here's your list. When you're bring them back to us, we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a frustration from a lot of people that I've heard. I want to thank you, Cindy, for coming.
Yes.
So I did
It
email.
is almost 5:00.
You don't-
I didn't get an email from you.
Okay, so that's from my Gen J email account, and unless it's blocked, I don't know why it wouldn't come through.
I saw your name on it, so I know he sent it, because he sent it out to the county council
And David and Mike.
and David and Mike. And David and Mike knew because we talked to them yesterday. And I'm really glad you came.
Yes, thank you.
I saw it in the paper and I called Mike.
Super good.
So,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Thank
Mike's
you for
known
making the
about it.
time. We
Mike's known
really
about it.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Cindy, is there a follow-up with you that we could have
Um,
after you've talked or have other questions or clarifications?
I think probably what I'm hearing right now is that what would be the best thing to do is have a community meeting with David and Mike here and have that, arrange that and come to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that way we can really talk to each other about what the improvements are that need to be made. And you can be talking to somebody who understands everything you're saying. Because again,
Right.
I'm looking at it from a budget level, not from a.
But you're directing
technicality.
policy of like how the department
Right.
is navigating with us. So
Yeah.
do you think within a month? I guess that's like, again, going back to these stretched out timeframes that are
Right.
frustrating for us.
Yes.
Um,
I cannot promise without calendaring with people. I don't want to
Okay.
say something that I can't.
I'll honor
I
that.
will
So you'll get back to
make it-
Jason?
Yeah,
Okay.
I will make it a priority.
Great.
Okay.
So Cindy, can I put you on the spot? I have one question. Thank you for coming.
That's 5.
Have you heard of any of the issues that were discussed today prior to today?
There are delay issues I have heard about. But they have been particular letters from specific
projects.
constituents.
Yeah.
Right.
So nothing from even Mike Carlson's group that there's meetings with David and we're trying to fix systemic.
No, I know they've been having meetings over in San Juan, and I knew that there was supposed to be a meeting
Okay.
here. I didn't know that there was a time frame promised.
Okay. Because my biggest concern, and I'll speak for what I'm
Yeah.
hearing, not just me, that the complaints that were provided by customers, citizens, builders to David are stopping at David. And they're not communicating that up to Mike, and they're definitely not communicating up to the council. Because I honestly think, had you known more about this sooner, that you would not have kept silent and there would have been a little more discussion a little sooner. I'm not complaining because we're having it now. I'm just saying that's where I see my customers and my people talk about where this information is stopping, because it is not getting one step further. And he thinks he's doing a great job. I'm not going to say if he is or isn't, but what I'm hearing is that he isn't.
So, Cindy, our emphasis at this moment, I know you gotta go, but I just wanted to answer that one thing is, when we started the meeting, I got a call and said, this is so bad, you gotta get the builders involved in this, you need to help us. And so I arranged a meeting with Mike Thomas first, because I figured it's an administrative part to deal with this. It's not gotten political, but it is now.
Right.
So our next step, if we don't see results, is to get before the council, and so we all three know. So that's just to elaborate on his answer.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had asked Jason if there's gonna be a sign-up sheet and if I could get that for follow-up.
Did you fill out one of these?
I just floated a notepad around with a yellow
Yeah, I
notepad.
don't know where it went. But
Just of who was here.
Yeah. Make sure you put your name on
It's
it.
lying around here somewhere.
okay.
Please.
And for
Sorry,
people
but
who
the
came
guy
with
the red
issues, we
shirt-
really would like these.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to follow up,
Okay.
and I didn't know who you were, so I get this list with this many people. I go, who was the guy that had that great idea?
Any other comments?
I have a question of how much of these regulations have come down from the legislature, and how many are generated right here in San Juan County?
You'd have to look at code for that.
Yeah, that's a.
Didn't we
You know,
adopt
RC
like RCC a couple years ago for building code?
That's been around since 2000.
Right. Okay. So that's why.
That's not new. There's a combination of land use and building codes that we all have to adhere to. Most of the most recent stuff is the critical area ordinance update, and I don't know, it was 2017, 2014. Those are the ones that a lot of people are struggling with today.
And the ones that are going to be reviewed, we need to stay on top of that.
Yeah,
You know,
if they're getting ready to
If they're getting ready to make changes, we need to know about them in advance for public comment. Andy?
One of the things that I guess I've seen that really disturbs me, and maybe I don't understand it, is under our land use county development, we are allowed single-family residence, reasonable development. We have our code for impact of hard surface, stormwater, stuff like that. All that stuff's basically outlined. And with the DNR requirements right now, forcing us, if you have a approved permit, driveway, and all that stuff, but you're going to take all these trees, now we got to do a forestry conversion. But we're already in a rural residential, rural farm forest, whatever our plan, our land use is. Why does DNR, and I've talked to the DNR folks, and I just want to go over their heads and talk to the director, whoever's guiding them, is ask them, why are you restricting pre-planned development in our county under land use for reasonable development of residential structures in a forested area? So I guess my question is, why are we going back to DNR and being threatened with this 6-year moratorium for, conservatively clearing a driveway and a building site before we even have our plan, before we know what we're doing? We've always done that in the past, right?
Part of the challenge, I think, is the staff at the county don't understand the thresholds that trigger the forest practice permit. And many people, I didn't until recently, many people don't understand that. And I think there's been that miscommunication where I've talked to the staff at DCD and they think nearly everything converts it.
Yeah.
You break a stick of wood on that property, all of a sudden it's forest practice conversion. You need a permit.
That's not true.
And it's not true. And that's what they don't understand.
Roughly 2 loads of logs.
I have talked to them. They said there are thresholds. If you don't meet those thresholds, you don't cut any trees down, you don't need a forest practice permit.
There's a really good flow chart on DNR's website regarding that, and it's really clear. And I agree with Jason in that county is misinformed and misinterpreting, and DNR has said that they would love to do education, and I think that people in this room need to be ready to sign up for that. At the same time, county's getting that education. It needs to be everybody hearing the same thing at the same time. And if you do want to go over somebody's head at DNR, it's
Hillary
Franz. There you go.
She's the.
That's who you go to. Good luck.
The forest practice rules have been in effect, started in 1974. Just an FYI, in 2007, the legislature eliminated the 6-year moratorium. And then it is left to the counties. And the way the process works, the county could do that. I asked David, why not a 50-year moratorium? What's magic about 6? The whole focus should be on mitigation. It should be on what was happening. Hence, they called the Department of Ecology, the DNR notifies DOE and the local agency. And then the local agency can deal with that. It may be denied, it may be not. And that's how it's supposed to be. But threatening people with a 6-year moratorium is very thin ground.
I just heard this morning.
And it's not coming from DNR.
I heard this
It's not
morning
coming from DNR.
from a gentleman on Lopez who wanted to keep confidential because he's getting a building permit and he's worried about retaliation.
Yeah.
And his comment was such that David and Jessa tried 3 times to impose the 6-year moratorium, and DNR nixed it.
Yeah.
DNR came down and said, no, you don't need it.
No.
But this is where we're at, because Jessa and David have this thing on their goal, their agenda, and it's like, oh, that's a forced practice permit. And it's written in the county code, the 6-year moratorium is in the county code under certain conditions. But DNR, the people at DNR were saying, we don't like doing that. We encourage people to find a mitigation solution. If you can plant some trees or do some other stuff, we love not doing a moratorium.
So,
But now they can talk to the county people and they're like, oh no, we're doing it.
so Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but last time when I talked to DNR, any tree within a tree length and a half.
That's part of it.
Any structure.
Yep, that's
You
right.
can take down without a permit.
That's right.
That might be 100 trees.
They don't care. If you're within 1.5 tree lengths from a structure, they don't consider that forest practices.
That's your wood.
That's a life safety issue for the reasons I said about refuting an arborist. DNR is not going to stand in the way of that, and they don't require a permit. It's called the Class 1 permit. Class 2 is when it begins the timber operation. Class 1 is really a notification.
You can't sell it.
You can sell it. You're not supposed to sell it. That's true. That's a little confusing on that, but what it says in the rule that you can cut in a 12-month period on a single piece of property, you can cut up to 5,000 board feet per year for your own personal use. And then the DNR, it is not written in the law, but it was always the region policy. The region foresters that I used to deal with said, hey, it's in 1.5 tree lengths from the structure, you go ahead and take them down.
That's any structure that people could be out of.
In this case, on the Lopez one that I know about, it was a pump house.
It was
for
a well.
Community water system.
Yeah.
And they said that pump house, he says, otherwise this would have been a violation. And the pump house was there, and they said there was no permit.
Right.
Mike, is it an essential building? Like a pump house would be an
No,
essential?
no,
It's
it's just a structure.
Oh, okay.
I used to have one in a trailer I'd pull into the woods all the time.
Do you have a question?
I think some old dilapidated shed would be questioned.
But I mean, I think to your point though, it could impact the sale if a buyer sees that, this tree is a danger and asks the seller to remove it, and the seller says, I'm not allowed to remove it, and they walk away from the sale, and that would be.
It's potential.
So I'm wondering what the impact of all of this and all these problems with the county is. I mean, for example, for lawsuits, I mean, we have to pay a staff to defend all of this, these poor practices, at the planning department. Because, there's a lot of people that need that have some major needs that, are considered easier to beg forgiveness than ask permission.
So I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying if county gets sued and taxpayer is footing the bill?
Yes.
I think that's a significant issue.
Yes.
What we have seen happen is that when we have a client that, had it up to here, lawyered up, county capitulates
Right.
and keeps it out of court.
And so where is the, working class or middle class?
Yeah.
Stand a friggin' chance in our county, and,
Yeah.
I've lived here over 30 years. And, I don't know if y'all remember the guest house moratorium.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me add
Yes,
this
yes.
before this meeting dissolves. I've set up a Google Groups. If you haven't got an invite from me, give me your email, write your email down on one of these papers, and I can add you to the group. It's just a way to capture the discussion without doing endless emails to 100 different people. Please sign up for that. It will also probably have more information as we go forward if there's any resolutions from the county, if problems get fixed, which is that's why we're here. But additionally, contact information if you choose it. But really, a way for you to have your thumb on the conversation as it goes forward. But more importantly, the details that are missing, because this is obviously an abbreviated meeting. We didn't go through all the details that are actually happening in every single one of these components. So there's a lot happening, and we just want you to be aware of it. We're trying to just advocate on your behalf because we're hearing so much of this. So I did want to take a minute to thank everybody for coming. And then if you want to make sure that you give us your contact information, please do that.
That would be great. And then, yes.
I would just like to thank you for the positive tone and constructive outcome of this meeting today. Thank you for the efforts. I catch a lot of it through Facebook, and God for it, because that's how this county seems to communicate. So I just want to appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's really good to be part of the community.
We want this to be positive. We want solutions that work for everybody. What I would love to be able to do is to hand county everything they need. Here it is. It's 100% complete. But when we can't get those answers, we can't do that. We would love to make their job easy as can be. And I think everybody here that deals in permitting wants to do that.
And I heard that there's a desire to be allies as opposed to being in conflict.
Yeah. Respect both directions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mike, you brought up that, there was a mention of another meeting with David and Mike, and you brought up taking it to council. I feel like another meeting, another potentially scheduled meeting, is not required. You've been doing a great job of meeting with county. I mean, I have been following your guys' meetings on San Juan through your emails. Thank you. I think you have a good dialogue going on. I think you have an appreciation for the issues here, and I think that these guys are going to be able to dial everything down to really good focus points. I would like to see just once a mention at a council meeting and a discussion in open council with 3 council members listening to their constituents, which, by the way, they each represent all of us. They no longer represent their individual islands. And so we need all 3 of them to hear. It was great that Cindy was here. But there were 2 council members who haven't heard this yet, and they're not hearing our voices. I don't think another meeting with David and Mike, with all of us, is going to bring anybody happiness. No. I want to sit in front of council and say, my business, my employees are going to lose their jobs. The people that work for my wife are not going to have housing. This is bigger than what you were talking about in your council chambers currently. So let's elevate this and let's do something about it. Because Cindy can't do it on her own. No, it takes 2 council members. Yeah. So I'd rather see this discussion come out of this with some comprehensive notes, maybe a little more discussion amongst the people. But go to council. Let's not go to another meeting with DCD.
Yeah. Are they scheduled to meet on Orcas anytime soon? Can we request that and have us put on the agenda?
Elaborate on that a little bit, just to fill you in on a couple of things for one meeting. First of all, Mike Thomas hears from me a lot. And right now, he gets it. He understands it. He's trying to figure out what to do. He needs support from the council, for sure, 100%. I've talked to Christine Minnie because she happens to be my representative. I don't know about the Lopez, about Jane. I've not talked to her yet. This is the first time I know Cindy has heard this, and I'm really glad she was here. But as I said before, we started at the administrative level, for sure, because that's the way our home rule charter works. But it's going to get real political real soon. And when I wrote that note to Mike and David to kind of memorialize the meeting we had, I said, you guys need to build trust. I said, this is going to get hostile. It's bigger than you think. And I don't think David understands that.
Well, and if we go to council and if all we say, if really the solution is we need to hire a planner, if we go to council as a unified group and sit in front of them and say, this is about purse strings, we can at least solve a part of this with some purse strings.
Yeah.
let's
You
figure out the
gotta
money.
get the right planners too, because they've got some planners in there. And I know one of my friends that calls it, he refers to them as baby planners. Because they don't know, and I made that point really succinctly to David. I said, listen, I don't want you to take offense to any of this. I'm trying to help. And I said, but I want you to know how we feel on this side of the county. We live here. I've got skin in the game. I've raised my family here. I have employees who rely on me. And I said, we don't know any of you guys, and you're not connected to this community, including yourself. You just moved here. And I said, you're coming in and making a bunch of changes, and people are not happy. And they feel disconnected and helpless. And I said, you have to communicate that. When Erica Shook came to work here, I told her a similar thing. I said, you know what? If I were you, I would volunteer. I would go to events, fundraisers, and things like that. Mingle with us so we know who you are. We're a community. And, you know, lo and behold, 3 or 4 months after she came up to me, hey, I'm here. You know, but I think that's important. And the other thing, that I didn't make this up, Fred Snow did. He says the name is community development. And he said, that's the word I'm looking for, is community.
So I'd like to address what you said, Justin. I agree that council does need to hear from us, but as of right now, other than the invite for David and Mike Thomas to come here, we have not taken it to them, and to go over their head to council without having a meeting with them to lay it out
Right.
is really not cool. We really need to go to them first without resolution, go to council.
Yeah, give them an opportunity.
Give
I
them
agree
an
with that.
opportunity to hear from
And-
Orcas.
And I don't question that at all. I just having followed Mike's emails, I feel like
Yes,
the conversation's been going on, and we've all been having this problem, and no offense to Jason, since back when Jason was in the office.
Yes.
The DCD has been dysfunctional. I've only been here for 23 years.
But not anywhere near this bad.
Yeah, but
But we've been fighting these issues.
Yeah.
So this is not like newsflash, hey, there's a problem at DCD.
right. But in order to go through the proper steps, we need to go to them, directly address the issues. If we don't get resolution, then take it to council. I know it extends the timeline, but they have heard from San Juan. Now they need to hear from Orcas.
Yeah.
So we need to get that meeting with them. And if they don't agree to come here, then they have not agreed to come, and we can go to council.
They should remember Orcas is the majority of their work. Aren't we still 80% of the county budget comes from Orcas?
I don't know.
Since Friday Harbor it's got its own permit department, its own everything.
I wouldn't doubt it's probably close to that.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
So asking for a day over here or something isn't out of.
Well, they used to have
Yeah.
council member meetings over here. But
Well,
COVID,
even the office.
COVID changed that.
Senior center.
I think I'm the only real estate broker here, but it's affecting buyers on the front end. We're getting buyers spooked about permits, so we're having people who are to build with some of the people here, and nope, we're gonna sell. We're not putting them on the market now, so they're not gonna build. We just closed on a house, and the people that bought it got tired of waiting for permits. So they bought an existing house.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more of that on the front end, so, and we're not spooking clients, we're saying permits take longer, we want to check with the county, check with the builder, we don't track all that closely. But it's affecting buyers on the front end, coming to this island that we're wanting to build.
Fill out one of our pages. Let us know that, because that is another issue that we haven't addressed. Let's see, somebody. Oh, Leith.
Well, this is just a little bit of a Band-Aid, but as I'm on EPRC and Dan is too, is that I just would like to encourage people, especially in the East Sound sub-area, to David and Cindy have been coming to every single one of our meetings, which is
Nice.
the first Thursday of every month. And we encourage anybody that's building within the sub-area because we do see all of their plans before they go to the planner to help them kind of say, you know, you really need to make sure you have this and that. And we even have permit people that are doing the permit process. They will come and ask if they can do a preview. So these are just some little things that you could do right now if you're in the East Sound sub area. But then it also gives you a chance to have public comment with Cindy and with David to start building this relationship that we all need as community members to find out where he is and I don't know.
Occasionally planners show up too.
Yes, and so I think the more we can help each other in all of these different areas, and the more we learn about the code and what works and what doesn't work, that this is a little piece, because EPRC doesn't have any authority. However, we do always make comments on the permits that are before us, and positive, negative, whatever, because all we do is look at the rules and the codes. But those get put in the planner's notes. So when the planner gets that permit, they will see what EPRC said. But I also just really encourage anybody that's going to be submitting a permit to come and ask, what do you see might be a problem with this? Are we out of parking compliance? Are we out of pitch roof? Are we, because a lot of people don't know the rules, and the website's hard to follow, and the code is hard to follow. So we're a good resource.
Thank you.
And then we also, for public comment, you can comment on anything you want to.
All right. Anybody else? I want to thank everybody for coming, and we will be collating all of this information. Please, if you can hand us those papers so we do have what issue is your issue or issues. Some people have multiple clients they're dealing with, and the issues are all different. It will really help us present a united front to county so that they can work on resolutions. That's what we all want. Thank you.
Tracy, is that
Yes.
form available online, like in that Google